Oh, hey, Mr. Trutna here. Here we go. We're going to go over Unit 11, Worksheet 2A. So your assignment was to do numbers 1 through 9, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to do the odd number problems. So I'm going to do virtually half of them here. Okay. So what we're doing in these in this worksheet is that we're going to be solving for x by completing the square, and then we're going to be square rooting to do it. And if there's no real value of x makes the equation true, we're going to write none. Okay? Okay, so here we go. So number 1, x squared plus 8x minus 12 is equal to 0. So remember, let me focus this, make sure that we're all good to go here. Okay, so so when we're solving by completing the square, remember the first thing that you're going to do is that if you want to take the c value and you want to move the c value over to the right side of the equation. Okay, so I have a minus 12 for my c value, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to add 12 to both sides of my equation. Alright, so that would cause these 12s to cancel out, and that would create a new equation, and my new equation would be x to the second power plus 8x equals positive 12. Okay, and then what I'm going to do is I am going to create a new c value right here. It's going to be plus, and I'm going to create a new c value right here, and I'm going to do that by what we call completing the square. Alright, so how do I do that? Well, remember, you take to complete the square, you take the b value, which is 8, you divide it by 2, that's 4, and then you raise whatever that result is, you raise it to the second power, and whatever that equals, that becomes your new c value. So my new c value is going to be 16. Okay, and then what you have to do is, since I added 16 to the left of the equal sign, you also have to add 16 to the right of the equal sign. Okay, so now I have x squared plus 8x plus 16 is equal to 12 plus 16. And then my next step is that I'm going to take this trinomial that I just created here, and I'm going to factor it. Okay, so how do we factor a trinomial? Well, remember what you do is you're going to go to the c term, which is positive 16. We are going to make our t-chart right here, and we're going to write whatever the c value is here, positive 16, and we're going to make a list of all the distinct pairs of numbers that multiply to make 16. 1 times 16, 2 times 8, 4 times 4, and one of those pairs will be my factors, and it'll be the factor will be the pair that adds to make positive 8, your b value. Alright, so you can see that's going to be 4 and 4. So therefore, x squared plus 8x plus 16 in factored form, its first factor is x plus 4 from that positive 4, and then the second factor is x plus 4. And that's going to be equal to 12 plus 16, which is 28. Okay, and now right here, if you notice, we have two sets of x plus 4s. So that means we have x plus 4 to the second power, and that is going to be equal to 28. Okay, and then what we do now at this point is we want to solve for x. We want to isolate the x. And the way that we isolate the x is that we're going to systematically get rid of the 2, and then we're going to systematically get rid of the positive 4. Okay, so first of all, how do you get rid of a power of 2? Well, you do the opposite math operation, which is you square root. So we're going to square root both sides of the equation. That second power would cancel out the square root symbol, and we would be left with x plus 4 is equal to the square root of 28, and now you can see that I'm going to use my calculator right now to find the square root of 28. So I'm going to go 28, find the square root of it, and I'm going to say it's 5.3. We're going to go ahead and round that to 5.3, so we get 5.3. But now remember, it's not just positive 5.3, it could also be negative 5.3. Okay? All right, so now I haven't isolated the x yet, so my next step is I have to subtract 4 from both sides of the equation, and these 4's would cancel out, and that would give me my two answers for x. So x is going to be, and once again, I'm going to have two answers for x. It's going to be positive 5.3 minus 4, which is 1.3. And then it's also going to be negative 5.3 minus 4, so that's negative 9.3. So when the instructions say solve for x by completing the square, we would say x is equal to negative 9.3, put a comma, 1.3. These are, x has two solutions and you have to put both. So that would be number 1. All right, okay, moving on to number 3. We have x to the second power minus 18x is equal to negative 57. All right, so in this problem, if you noticed, here's my equal sign. To the left of the equal sign, the c value has already been moved over. So in number 1, where I had to add 12 to both sides of the equation to move the c value over to the right of the equal sign, in number 3, that first step has already been done. So then now what I'm going to do is I'm going to complete the square. So how do I do that? So once again, to complete the square, you're going to take the b value, which is negative 18. You're going to divide it by 2, get a result, that's negative 9, and then you're going to raise that to the second power. Okay, and whatever that equals, that's going to be your new c value. So you're going to rewrite this problem as x to the second power minus 18x plus, and then your new c value is going to be that right there, which is 81. Now that's going to be equal to negative 57, and now since I added 81 to the left of the equal sign to balance it out, I have to add 81 to the right of the equal sign as well. Okay, so now my next step is I'm going to factor this trinomial right here. Okay, so how do you factor a trinomial once again? Hopefully you're remembering. You're going to take the c value, which is positive 81. You're going to make a t-chart, and you're going to write down all the distinct pairs of numbers that multiply to make 81. 1 times 81, 9 times 9, and then there's 3 times 27. So there's your pairs of numbers that multiply 81. One of those will be your factors, and it'll be which one adds to make your b value negative 18. And you can say the only way we can get that is if we turn both of the 9's into negative. Negative 9 times negative 9 is 81. Negative 9 plus negative 9 is negative 18. So that means x squared minus 18x plus 81 factors into x minus 9 is my first factor, and then my second factor is x minus 9. And then that's going to be equal to negative 57 plus 81, which is positive 24. Okay, so I have two sets of x minus 9, so I'm going to write that like this. X minus 9 to the second power. That's going to be equal to 24. And then to solve this equation, I'm going to have to isolate the x. So I'm going to have to get rid of that second power first. Okay, and the way you get rid of the second power is you do the opposite math operation, which is you square root both sides of the equation. That 2 would cancel out that square root, and we would be left with x minus 9 is equal to, and then I'm going to use my calculator here, if I can get my phone to switch over to the other value. Hold on. Okay, hold on. Got to get my phone. There's my calculator. There we go. And I need to find the square root of 24. So type in 24, press the square root button. I'm going to round out to 4.9. So square root of 24 is 4.9. Don't just say positive 4.9 because it has to be positive and negative 4.9. Okay, all right, I haven't isolated the x yet. So next I have to add 9 to both sides of the equation. So these 9's will cancel out, and then I will get x is equal to, and then I'm going to have two answers. My two answers will be positive 4.9 plus 9 and negative 4.9 plus 9. So that is 13.9 for one of my answers, and then my other answer would be, let's see, what would it be? 4.1. Okay, so number 3, the two answers are x is equal to, and you want to write both of them, 4.1, put a comma, 13.9. Okay, so there we go. There's number 3. All right, moving on to number 5. X squared minus 10x equals 26. So if you notice in number 5, the 26 has already been moved over. So we don't have to do the first step. So what am I going to do now? I'm just going to complete the square. So I'm going to take the b value, which is negative 10. I'm going to divide it by 2. That gives me a result of negative 5. I'm going to raise that to the second power, and that's going to be my new c value. So now my equation becomes x to the second minus 10x plus 25. Where did the 25 came from? That is negative 5 to the second power. I have an equal sign, I have a 26, and since I put a plus 25 on the left of the equal sign, I have to put a plus 25 to the right of the equal sign. Okay? Now I factor my trinomial. Okay? Now, if you notice, every time that I factored for these particular trinomials, I have always ended up with one set of parentheses to the second power. And that's going to be equal to 51, because 26 plus 25 is 51. So what is this going to be? All right, well, remember, it's always x, and then whatever you put right here for these, when you do complete the square, it's whatever the b value is divided by 2. So for instance, if we went back to number 1 really quickly, and if you looked right here, notice I had x plus 4 and x plus 4, and notice 8 divided by 2 was 4. That 4 went right there. Notice in number 3, when I went the b value, negative 18, divided by 2, that was negative 9. That's what went for my factor, x minus 9. Okay? So since this, number 5, my b value divided by 2 is negative 5, I'm going to get x minus 5 squared is equal to 51. All right? So now I'm going to solve for x by isolating the x. I'm going to eliminate that second power first by taking the square root of both sides of the equation. That 2 would cancel out the square root symbol. I would get x minus 5 is equal to, and then I'm going to use my calculator to figure out what the square root of 51 is. So here's my calculator. 51 square root 7.1. Okay, just round your decimals to the 10th place if you get a decimal. So we get 7.1, but remember, it's not just positive 7.1, it's positive and negative 7.1. Still isolating the x, I would add 5 to both sides of the equation. So when the 5's cancel out, I'm going to get x is equal to, and then I'm going to get two answers for x. One of the answers will be positive 7.1 plus 5. That's 12.1. My other answer will be negative 7.1 plus 5, which is negative 2.1. Okay, so my two answers to this particular problem would be x is equal to, and you need to write them both, negative 2.1 and 12.1. All right, and there we go. So hopefully I didn't make any mistakes right here. So let me see, I'm just checking. So 7.1 negative plus 5 is negative. Okay, so we're good. Okay, last one that I'm going to do here, I'm going to do the other number 5, which actually should be number 7 down here. Okay, so here we go. X squared plus 14x plus 47 is equal to 5. So if you notice my c value, I have a c value. So if you have a c value, you need to move it to the left. You need to move it to the from the left side to the right side of the equation. So my first step here is I'm going to subtract 47 from each side of the equation. All right. So when I do that, these 47s will cancel out. I'm going to get x to the second power plus 14x, and that's going to be equal to negative 42. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a new c value right here. So I'm going to go plus, and I'm going to create a new c value. Okay, and I'm going to do that by completing the square. So I take my b value, 14, I divide it by 2, that gives me a result of 7. I take that 7, I raise it to the second power, and whatever that equals, that's my new c value, so I get 49. Since I added 49 to the left of the equal sign, I also have to add 49 to the right of the equal sign. Okay, now my next step is I'm going to factor this, what we call this trinomial, when I completed the square. So I'm going to factor. So how do we factor? Well, let's go ahead and do this one in our head. We can do the shortcut if we want, but we know we're going to have 2 parentheses. So I look here, I have to find 2 numbers that multiply to make 49, but they also have to add to make 14. So the only 2 numbers would be 7 and 7. Okay, so, and positive 7. So I'm going to get x plus 7. I'm going to get x plus 7. Once again, notice those numbers are the same value that you got when you divided the b value by 2. Feel free to use that shortcut. That's going to be equal to 7. Negative 42 plus 49 is 7. Okay, so this means I have 2 sets of x plus 7s, and that's going to be equal to 7. And now I'm going to solve for x by isolating the x. Okay, so I'm going to get rid of this power of 2 by square rooting both sides of the equation. That power of 2 would cancel out the square root, and I would get x plus 7 is equal to plus or minus whatever the square root of 7 is. Alright, so the square root of 7, according to my calculator, this is where you're going to want a calculator. So here we go. Okay, so I'm going to type in 7. I'm going to press the square root function, and you can see the square root of 7 is 2.6457. That's going to round to 2.6. So it's plus or minus 2.6. Continue to solve. I'm going to subtract 7 from both sides of the equation. Those 7s will cancel out, and I'm going to get x is equal to, and now I'm going to get 2 answers for x. One of my answers would be positive 2.6 minus 7. And then my other answer would be negative 2.6 minus 7. Okay? So positive 2.6 minus 7 is negative 4.4. There's one of my answers. And then negative 2.6 minus 7 is negative 9.6. So we would say x is equal to negative 9.6, put a comma, negative 4.4. Alright, so that would be number 7. Alright, last one, number 9. X squared minus 16x plus 20 is equal to 12. Once again, I have a c value right here. So my first move is I want to move the c value over to the right side of the equation. So I'm going to subtract 20 from both sides of the equation. Okay, those 20s would cancel out. I would get x to the second power minus 16x is equal to negative 8. Now I'm going to complete the square. So I'm going to take my b value, which is negative 16. I'm going to divide that by 2. That's going to be equal to negative 8. Now remember, this number is going to be important to us because that's going to be our factors. Then I'm going to raise that to the second power, and whatever that equals I put right here, and that's a positive 64, so I put a positive 64. Since I put a positive 64, I have to put a positive 64 over here. Okay, now I'm going to take this trinomial and I'm going to factor it. Okay, so now remember, if we've been paying attention, to factor it, I'm going to get a quantity to the second power, and it's going to be x, and whatever number goes here for my factor, it's going to be that number right there that you got when you divided the b value by 2, which is negative 8. So I'm going to get x minus 8 to the second power. That's going to be equal to 56. Negative 8 plus 64 is 56. Now I'm going to isolate the x. I'm going to eliminate the second power. I'm going to square root both sides of the equation. That second power would cancel out the square root symbol. And now we have x minus 8. You don't need the parentheses anymore. And that's going to be equal to 56, or the square root of 56. So what's the square root of 56? We get out our calculator, 56 square root 7 point, and this would round to 7.5. So it's positive or negative 7.5. We're not done yet because you have to add 8 to both sides of the equation. These 8s would cancel, and we would get x is equal to, and we're going to get 2 answers for x. Okay, one of my answers would be whatever positive 7.5 plus 8 is, and that's 15.5. And my other answer would be whatever negative 7 plus 8 is, and that is 0.5. So on number 9, you should have got x is equal to 0.5, put a comma, 15.5, you have to put both. There's my answers for both of them. Okay? Alright, there we go, you guys. There's worksheet 2A, the odd numbers, and leave you with a little Grateful Dead on the way out today. We will get by. Alright, see you guys later.